Membri del governo, del corpo diplomatico, signore e signori.
Ladies and gentlemen,
All'inizio della mia visita in Irlanda sono grato per l'invito a rivolgermi a questa distinta assemblea che rappresenta la vita civile, culturale
and religious life of the country, together with the members of the diplomatic corps and guests. I appreciate the friendly welcome I have received from the President of Ireland, which reflects a tradition of cordial hospitality for which the Irish are known throughout the world. I also appreciate the presence of a delegation from Northern Ireland. I'd like to thank you also for your words, Prime Minister. As you know, the reason for my visit is to take part in the World Meeting of Families, held this year in Dublin. The Church is, in a real way, a family among families and senses the need to support families in their efforts to respond faithfully and joyfully to their God-given vocation in society. For the families, this is not only a meeting to reaffirm their commitment to loving fidelity, mutual assistance and reference for God's gift of life in all its forms, but also to testify to the unique role played by the family in the education of its members and the development of a sound and flourishing social fabric. I would like to see the World Meeting of Families as a prophetic witness to the rich patrimony of ethical and spiritual values that it is the duty of every generation to cherish and to protect. One need not be a prophet to perceive the difficulties faced by our families in today's rapidly evolving society, or to be concerned by the effects that breakdown in marriage and family life will necessarily entail at all levels for the future of our communities. Families are the glue of society. Their welfare cannot be taken for granted, but must be promoted and protected by every appropriate means. And it was in the family that each of us took his or her first steps. There we learned to live together in harmony, to master our selfish instincts and reconcile our differences, and above all to discern and seek those values that give authentic meaning and fulfillment to our lives. If we speak of our entire world as a single family, it is because we rightly acknowledge the bonds of our common humanity and we sense our call to unity and solidarity, especially with the weakest of our brothers and sisters. Yet all too often we feel impotent before the persistent evils of racial and ethnic hatred, intractable conflicts and violence, contempt for human dignity and for fundamental human rights, and the growing divide between rich and poor. How much we need to recover in every instance of political and social life, the sense of being a true family of peoples, and never to lose hope or the courage to persevere in the moral imperative to be peacemakers, reconcilers, and guardians of one another. Here in Ireland, this challenge has a special resonance in light of the long conflict that separated brothers and sisters of a single family. 20 years ago, the international community followed attentively the events in Northern Ireland that led to the signing of the Good Friday Agreement. The Irish government, together with political, religious and civil leaders of Northern Ireland, and the British government, and with the support of other world leaders, created a dynamic context for the peaceful settlement of a conflict that had caused untold pain on both sides. We can give thanks for the 2 decades of peace that followed this historic agreement, while expressing firm hope that the peace process will overcome every remaining obstacle and help give birth to a future of harmony, reconciliation, and mutual trust. The Gospel reminds us that true peace is ultimately God's gift. It flows from a healed and reconciled heart and branches out to embrace the entire world. Yet it also requires constant conversion on our part as a source of the spiritual resources needed to build a society of authentic solidarity, justice, and to the service of the common good. Without that spiritual foundation, our ideal of a global family of nations risks becoming no more than another empty platitude. Can we say that the goal of creating economic prosperity or financial prosperity leads of itself to a more just and equitable social order? Or could it be that the growth of a materialistic, throwaway culture has in fact made us increasingly indifferent to the poor and to the most defenseless members of our human family, including the unborn, deprived of the very light to life? Perhaps the most disturbing challenges to our conscience in these days is the massive refugee crisis, which will not go away, and whose solution calls for wisdom, a breadth of vision, and a humanitarian concern that go far beyond short-term political decisions. I'm very aware of the circumstances of our most vulnerable brothers and sisters. I'm thinking especially of those women and children who in the past have gone through particularly difficult situations, and the orphans as well. If one thinks about those who are most vulnerable, I cannot fail to acknowledge the grave scandal caused in Ireland by the abuse of young people, minors, by members of the church charged with responsibility for their protection and education. And they're still in my heart. I can still hear the words that were said to me at the airport by the Minister for Children. Thank you very much for your words. The failure of the ecclesiastical authorities, bishops, religious superiors, priests and others adequately to address these repellent crimes has given rise to, quite rightly, outrage and remains a source of pain and shame for the Catholic community. I myself share those feelings. My predecessor, Pope Benedict, spared no words in recognizing both the gravity of the situation and in demanding that truly evangelical, just and effective measures be taken in response to this betrayal of trust. His frank and decisive intervention continues to serve as an incentive for the efforts of the Church's leadership, both to remedy past mistakes and to adopt stringent norms meant to ensure that they will never happen again. Very recently, in a letter to the people of God, he underlined the responsibility, and in fact a major responsibility, to eliminate this appalling aspect of the church at each level. Each child is in fact a precious gift of God to be cherished, encouraged to develop his or her gifts and guided to spiritual maturity and human flourishing. The Church in Ireland, past and present, has played a role in promoting the welfare of children that cannot be obscured. And it's my hope that the gravity of the abuse scandals, which have cast light on the failings of many, will serve to underline the importance of the protection of minors and vulnerable adults on part of the whole society as a whole. In this regard, all of us are aware of how urgent it is to provide our young people wise guidance and give them sound values on their journey to maturity. Dear friends, almost 90 years ago, the Holy See was among the first international institutions to recognize the Irish Free State. That initiative signaled the beginning of many years of dynamic cooperation and harmony, with only an occasional cloud on the horizon. Recently, intensive endeavour and goodwill on both sides have contributed significantly to a promising renewal of those friendly relations to the mutual advantage of all. The threads of that story go back to over a millennium and a half ago, when the Christian message preached by Pelagius and Patrick found a home in Ireland and became an integral part of Irish life and culture. Many saints and scholars were inspired to leave these shores and bring their new faith to other lands. To this day, the names of Columba, Columbanus, Brigida, Gallo, Killian, Brendan, and so many others are still revered throughout Europe and beyond. And on this island, monasticism as a source of civilization and artistic creativity wrote a splendid page in Irish and universal history. I cordially invoke upon you and upon all the beloved Irish people God's blessings of wisdom, joy, and peace. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, please remain in your seats while An Taoiseach and Pope Francis depart. Thank you.
Well, that's the end of the Pontiff's address there, leaving to that applause, accompanied by the Taoiseach, who had very strong words for the Pope, David. It was quite a harsh speech.
Well, with surviving